is Tashae Smith, and I'm the Andrew W. Mellon Curatorial Fellow for the Chrysler Museum of Art and Hampton University Museum.
And I'm Katie Rovito. I'm the NEH Fellow in Paintings Conservation here at the Chrysler.
Today, Katie and I will be discussing the modern Nigerian artist Afi Ekong and the conservation treatment of this piece, Grief, which was completed by Katie. You will be able to see this piece in person in the upcoming exhibition, Sankofa Constructing Modern African Art, which will open at Hampton University Museum on Friday, April 12, 2024. You can learn more about this exhibition and the exhibition I Am Copying Nobody, the art and political cartoons of Akinola Nashekon, opening at the Chrysler Museum of Art on Saturday, April 13th, by visiting the exhibition tab at mellondiversifyingthefield.com.
As Tashae said, Grief will be displayed in 2024. To get this piece ready for exhibition, I mended a few small tears and did some retouching in the cracks.
Now, before we get into the conservation treatment, let's learn a bit more about Afi Ekong. Chief Lady Constance Afi Ekong, better known as Afi Ekong, was a prolific artist, art collector, fashion designer, jewelry maker, and entrepreneur. From 1951 to 1953, she trained as a painter and fashion designer at Oxford City Technical School. She later attended St. Martin's School of Fine Arts and later studied the history of costumes at the Central School of Arts. After her art training in England, she became the first female artist in Nigeria to be academically trained and the first female artist to exhibit in Nigeria. Ekong's work has been exhibited in Nigeria, Argentina, and Europe. Her art style was very versatile when it came to her use of color, subject matter, and technique. She painted dark and stormy landscapes, beautiful portraits, and even vibrant village scenes. Now, while we're on the topic of Ekong's art style, let's return to Grief to talk more about Ekong's technique of layering paint. Katie, can you tell us more about this?
Yeah. So as a paintings conservator, I got to spend a lot of time closely examining this painting to try and understand how it was made. The color contrast between the orange figure and the cool colors in the background is the most obvious at first, but what was striking to me about this painting is Ekong's contrast between her different paint applications and her unconventional techniques. If we zoom in on the background here, we can see that Ekong started with this brushy wash of bright pink paint over a white ground. And then the transparent pink is juxtaposed with the opaque blues and greens in the background that look like they were applied with a palette knife. And a palette knife is a tool typically used by artists to mix colors, but when you use it to paint with, you get this surface with varying thicknesses, and it exposes the peaks of the canvas weave through the scraped paint layer. Compared to the background, we can see that the female figure was painted with thicker impasto that could have been applied with either a brush or a palette knife. There's also these subtle markings in the figure, particularly in the hair, that look like Ekong carved into wet paint using the back end of her brush. And finally, she used this more fluid dark brown paint to outline the figure.
Thank you for explaining more about that. You know, something about this piece that I absolutely love is how Ekong painted the female figure in yellows, orange, and blacks, making the emotion of grief, which is usually represented by darker, cooler colors of fiery and consuming emotion. This woman is literally consumed or ablaze with grief. You know, it makes us question whether this woman is feeling grief or whether she is the physical embodiment of it. Even Ekong's use of the palette knife, which caused the colors to be rough and disrupting, makes us feel this distress caused by grief. The feel and look of this painting are very different from her painting, Fateke and Ada, which was created in 1961, the same year Ekong created Grief. Although these two paintings use similar pinks, blues, and greens, Fateke and Ada has smoother and blended paste strokes. This makes this painting feel more calming than Grief.
So when I first got this project and I was doing the initial assessment, I didn't really see anything wrong with it. The canvas tension is good, there's no major areas of paint loss. It wasn't dirty, so it didn't need to be surface cleaned. Looking closer though, we could see that there were 3 small tears. One of the tears had this piece of brown paper attached to the back of the canvas. Now there's a lot of different ways we can use to mend tears. It all depends on the kind of canvas, how old the painting is, and how long the tear has been there. Let's take a look at the back of the canvas. And you can see that I chose to do this Japanese tissue mend. And Japanese tissue is a handmade paper that's very thin but also really strong, and it binds well to canvas fibers. I used a flexible adhesive to attach the tissue to the inside of the tear. And then what we're seeing here on the back of the canvas is a monofilament polyester that I attach as an additional support. The materials that we choose for tear mending need to be thin so they don't add any bulk to the canvas. They also can't have any hard edges because patches on the back that are made from thicker paper or canvas can telegraph through and eventually become noticeable on the front.
Thank you, Katie. Now, another question. Can you talk more about how you treated the cracked paint of this piece?
Sure. So something we often see when artists layer different kinds of paint like this are drying cracks. And this happens when the upper layer of paint dries faster than the layer under it. It'll shrink as the solvent evaporates and start to pull apart. And there were quite a few areas of drying cracks in this painting. So I did what we called in-painting, which means I used a small brush to paint in the losses. Now I try to match the color, but not the kind of paint. We use a synthetic medium that is completely reversible in a solvent that won't harm the original. My work can also be distinguished from the original by looking at it under a UV light. The older oil paint has a bright autofluorescence, while my in-painting appears dark. And I didn't in-paint every single crack. I in-painted the most noticeable cracks that we both felt were distracting from Ekong's work.
Now, another follow-up question is, how long did it take you to complete the in-painting for this piece?
I spent a few days in-painting because I worked on the cracks and then also did a little in-painting on the 3 tears. Thank you guys for joining us for our discussion on grief by Afi Ekong.
If you're interested in learning more about Afi Ekong, you can head to mellondiversifyingthefield.com to read my blog post, Artist Talk Grief by Chief Lady Constance Afi Ekong.
And if you want more details about how the tears were treated, check out my blog, Mending Tears in Afi Ekong's Grief.
Thank you. All right. Nice.